Howdy, I'm Jace. I have sex addiction and I work with a bunch of other people who do too. If you're a person with sex addiction, should you disclose to others that you have this particular area of addiction? And if so, when and how? It's a really common question that I get asked, and it's exactly what we're going to be talking about in today's video. If you have not yet and you dig this content or you want to support me in the channel, please subscribe and hit that little alert button so you get the notifications when new videos come out. You can also, of course, like and share this content if there are others you know who would dig it as well. Let's dive right into these questions. And I know in today's internet age where I'm supposed to give you a 5-second answer and cover, give valuable content in like 90 seconds. I can't really do that. This is a sensitive question. So if you're really looking for the answer, let's talk about it today. If you're looking for 5-second entertainment, like I'm just never going to be that person. So should you disclose? Should you not? If so, when? All of those. One, y'all know I don't do the word should. There's no specific right or wrong, good or bad. In this situation, there's not a one size fits all answer to this question. Of course, the answer is it depends on you and your particular situation. So I'll cover some kind of just thoughts and ideas and experiences around this topic as concisely as possible. So the biggest thing I want to talk on is if you are going to let other people in your life know how to go about that in a way that will be most beneficial for you and potentially create stronger bonds. If you are going to share this, let's have it be as positive of a process and experience as possible. Yeah. So the first thing I want to put out there is it's really difficult to not receive shame and judgment back if you're holding shame and judgment yourself. So if you feel like this one is who you are, side note, it's not. Addiction is not who we are. Addiction is something we have, like other people who might have diabetes or cancer. It's a physical condition, and it has a background, of course, which we talk about in other videos. So if you're in a space of shame and self-judgment, it's very likely you're going to get that in return. So if you are going to disclose this, I advise you to first do as much work as you can around that and recognize what addiction really is and what it is not and where it comes from. Shameless plug. I have a whole course that talks about exactly those things. And the link for that is below, my Introduction to Sex Addiction course, which covers all of this in a brief and concise manner. So you can check that out if you want that info. But having some of your work done is really important. And it's really important that you have a strong understanding of what sex addiction is. So that way you can actually explain what's going on to someone, because there's a lot of confusion and misunderstandings around sex addiction. Most people think sex addiction is people who just really, really like sex and like just want to have sex with everyone. Well, that's really not the case, right? Like people think of it as, of course, a moral thing, which it's not. They used to think that about all areas of addiction, and that it has some sexual perversion to it, which it doesn't necessarily have to. We know that you could never touch another person or interact with another person, and you can still have sex addiction. So first, get educated. So that way you're able to present it in an accurate manner. You may be the first and maybe only person that they encountered who has sex addiction, and they may have questions, they may have fears, they may have concerns, and you'll be their only source for that information. So please have accurate information and know yourself and your situation well before you disclose. This is still a sensitive area and a sensitive topic. And so we each get an opportunity to be ambassadors when we share this with others. We get to help the entire community and support recovery when we can help break the stigma. And that's one of the things you get to do when you do disclose your own experience with sex addiction, which is really cool. When I do share it with people, or back in the day, obviously, I can't hide it now, but back in the day when I would share it with people, I would make sure to include it as just one aspect, one of the many aspects that make up who I am and my life and how I show up in the world, right? Because it's not who I am. It's not who you are. It's not something I chose. It's not something I initially had agency over. And I'm not a victim of it either. I mean, technically addiction does happen to us, but responsibility comes when we move into recovery, which I reckon you are potentially if you're watching this video. So I would share it in the sense like, I have my dog Indiana. I live in a travel trailer as a nomad. I grew up in Albuquerque. I have sex addiction. I have 2 sisters and a single mom. And it's not like this is the way that most people do it, and how I advise you not to do it. Like, hey, Jan's the person you're disclosing to. There's something really terrible that I need to talk with you about. Jan's already freaked out, for one, by the way. And she's already geared up for, oh my gosh, what is happening? Now, if this is a partner and a spouse, that's a different story. That disclosure for a spouse or a partner is a totally different story. We're not talking about disclosing the past of your addiction, just caveat. So Jan's a friend or your mom or somebody you just want to bring into the loop, okay? And then you say, Jan, I have sex addiction. Or unfortunately, most people, and I used to do this too, would say, I'm a sex addict. And Jan's going, what the is that? And what does that mean? And am I in danger? And are you part of some weird like sex cult? And are the kids in danger? And like there's all of these fears from society's foolishness with this area of addiction start coming up, right? And right away she's thinking, oh my gosh, this is a huge deal. This person, like there's so much shame and judgment here. And like she's going to be picking up your stuff, right? And she, having generally no anchor in this and no context for it, is going to follow your lead. So if you're starting out with shame, judgment, anger at yourself, whatever emotional hangups you have around it, Jan's going to pick up on those and she will follow your lead. She'll go, oh, this must be really terrible. Look how this person is sharing this. Like, wow, this is a really bad thing. And it's not, it's a thing. It sucks. Like, as all addiction sucks, it does suck. That's legit. And yet we have so much power around it, right? So, which is why I lead you powered recovery. I don't, whatever, we'll talk about that another time. But anyway, so if you are going to disclose it, make sure that you've done some of your healing and your work around it so that you're able to show up and just share about it as one aspect of yourself, and that you're able to answer questions. So you have some education. So if Jan asks, well, what is that? What does that mean? You can say, well, it's a condition of the brain and how it's tied into the reward system. And of course, sex is majorly tied to our reward system for reproduction. And it's basically a misfunction of that process that has gotten wired into my survival mechanisms because of some stuff in my early life. And it just shows up with what I consider, for me, unhealthy and unwanted sexual behavior. And all of a sudden it's like, well, that's not scary. You're not some pervert or pedophile, right? You could also skip the phrase sex addiction if you wanted to, and you could just explain the behavior instead. Like you could say, hey, Jen, I just wanted to bring you in the loop. I've got this really big part of my life, and because we're so close and I feel safe with you, I want to share it with you just so you know what's been going on. I noticed last year that I was really engaging in behaviors and thought patterns that really didn't serve me, that really aren't in alignment with my integrity with regard to how I was showing up in my relationship with sex and how I treat others and how I let them treat me. And so I went into recovery for it. I'm working a program, or I'm walking a path of healing around that so that I can be my healthiest, best self and show up in the world and for people I love that way. All of a sudden, Jan's like, well, fuck yeah. Do that. Can I come? What is that? I want to go to it, right? And you can even say, like, this behavior became compulsive for me and really, really got out of my control. But I'm bringing that back in. I'm getting agency over it. And I made a really good choice by working with this awesome woman I found on YouTube who leads an empowered path of self-mastery for recovery. No, I'm just kidding. Or am I? But anyway, you can, sharing it that way is very different than I'm a sex addict, right? It's like, hey, I recognized I had unhealthy behavior and I'm doing something about it. The people in your life who love you are going to be like, yeah, very cool. Do that. How can we support you? Right. And they might ask, like, well, what does that mean? Unhealthy? Like, what did that show? How did that show up for you? And you can share that with them, or you can say, well, I'm not really comfortable in getting into the details, but I wanted to let you know that this is a really like difficult place for me. I have a lot of hurt and sadness around this. And I even have some embarrassment in sharing this with you. When we can show up vulnerably and honestly with people, and we can come at it from a less dramatic way, because let's be real, like, Jan, I have something terrible to tell you, I'm a sex addict, like, that's dramatic, right? Instead, like, hey, Jan, I want to bring you into the loop because I care about you, and there's a really big part of my life I haven't shared with you yet, and go into what we just talked about. That's not dramatic. It just is what it is, right? So let's drop the drama around sex addiction, and you'll watch the stigma fall away as well. So there's how you can share it in a way that can be beneficial and can be really bonding. When I work with people and they share it that way, they find that it actually brings them closer to people. And some people might not dig it. Some people might be like, nope, I don't want to participate in that situation. And that's okay too, which is why it's really important to have your team, your support team, already established before you go into making big changes like that. And sharing this just because of how it is in society still, this can be a big change, right? So you want to make sure that you have support and you have a plan in place where you would tell your team, your support team, okay, today's the day. Jan and I are having tea at her house, and I'm ready to tell her. And you would, okay, your guide would say, like, fantastic, let's do a call afterwards, or what's your action plan going to be for afterwards. Your accountability partner would be like, hey, let's bookend this, or like make sure that you're up in your self-care, or how can we support you. Have that in place already in case things don't go smoothly, because I'm not promising that they will. They have for me, because I'm just like, hey, this exists and I'm dealing with it, which is very different than, hey, this exists and it harms me and it harms everyone around me, and fuck you. Like, people will be like, well, I'm not a fan of that. And I'll be honest, when I disclosed with the first person, which was my mommy, I was not sober. I had been in recovery, but I was still relapsing. So, but I was trying. I was putting in the effort, and people put a lot of respect behind that, I have found. So really, people's responses to you and to this information rely almost entirely on how you present it. You want to make sure that it's an appropriate time where you can share information comfortably. So if you're like in line at Starbucks and you're like, hey, Jan, guess what? Like, that's not a really considerate place to share that. And it might not be an opportunity to have a heartfelt discussion around that. Who to disclose to in your life, that's up to you. I took a path of disclosing to everyone in my life and also the world, for different reasons, the world, but for people in my life, because I recognize I can't be fully happy and fully healthy if I'm not integrated. If I have sections of my life that are secret, and like, these people know this and these people know that, and I keep it from these people, I can't be in the experience of wholeness that is my truth, and I can't be in my integrity integrated, right? I can't have all of my parts integrated if I'm still living a double life. So I chose to disclose to everyone, and some people have since left my life, maybe as a result, maybe not. Some people have been weirded out that I do this work publicly, and that's okay too. And because I already have my support and my foundation built within myself and with my team, right? And of course, back in 2015, when I started this channel, or even 2014, when I started disclosing, I still had support behind me already, and I had a plan, right? So who you want to tell, that's up to you. If someone doesn't honor you and respect you already, and they're kind of a jerk in your life, yeah, maybe don't share with that person, and maybe don't invest too much time in that person either. That's up to you. But the people close in your life, you can't have true intimacy without having honesty. So, and we can't really have holistic sobriety and holistic healing if we're lying. It just doesn't work out. Not because lying's bad and it's immoral and it's a sin. No, because it breaks apart. It fractures us, right? So we're not integrated. And if we're not integrated, we're not in integrity, we're not able to show up as our authentic selves, we're not really able to be present and connect with people. And that does not make for really solid relationships. The other part of this on should you disclose or not, let's say, is it a good idea to disclose or not? Let's get rid of should altogether. You know, that depends on your priorities. Are your relationships priorities to you? Do you want people to know who you really are? Do you want the freedom from addiction? Because that only comes when you're living in integrity. And I don't mean integrity in the moral sense, I mean integrated. When you're living as a whole person who can show up as yourself, that's freedom from addiction and all limitation. So if that's important to you, and if actually holding on to sobriety is important to you, then yeah, telling people in your life is a good idea, with keeping in mind all of the things we talked about here. Disclosing with a partner is a totally different story, and we can talk about that on a different video. So I just want to make that clear again. If you have any spiritual practice, bring these questions into that. Feel into that as well. Check them in with spirit, universe, God, mystery, love, goddess, whatever you want to call it. Someone recently called it Sky Daddy, which I think is hilarious. Sorry if that's offensive. But, you know, bring that in too. Bring it into your prayer practice, your meditation practice, your contemplative practice, whatever it is. And trust yourself. At the end of the day, trust yourself. And I know some programs teach that you're not trustworthy, you can't trust yourself, but I don't agree with that. I really don't. So I hope that is helpful to you. If you have additional questions or something wasn't clear, you can always reach me at my website, jacedowney.com. I won't get back to you the same day, but I do try to get to as many emails as I can over time. So if you can be patient, you can send that in through my website. There's a contact page on there, which is the best way to get a hold of me. Thank you so much for that question, and just also for how receptive y'all have been. I know there are some folks out there that are pretty mean and pretty cruel towards me, but for the most part, most people are very kind and receptive and loving. And so if you're one of those people, thank you very much for accepting how I've disclosed all of this and how I've shared this with the world. And I really appreciate that. That's it for me. We got a free resource coming up right after this. It's one of my favorites, so stick around to get that. And don't forget, you can get that Introduction to Sex Addiction course in the link below, which is going to give you everything you need and potentially a really accessible way of explaining it. You could even share the course. You could sit down with your family and watch it together if that's in alignment with you and your relationship. So I invite you to do that as well. I love you a whole lot. I think you're wonderful, and I will see you next time. Until then, of course, stay curious. Hello again. I have one of my all-time favorite things to get to offer you, and I'm so excited that I can offer it to you for free. I've taken one of my favorite workshops to give and condensed it down into a mini course that you can take online at your convenience whenever you want. I'm going to be talking about how to go from powerless to empowered, not just with regard to addiction, but life in general. You can get that by clicking on the link below at no cost to you.